Hi, today I'm gonna test a new experimental video style. Basically, I have this whiteboard and I'm gonna draw to explain the concepts of conformity. So, let's begin. Oh. So, conformity. Basically, conformity is like when you're expected to follow the norm. So, for example, let's say you're the person in red, and then the other people are like people in green. They have like a certain, basically they have shared values, and you do not. So basically what you would do is you're expected to follow their shared values, conform to the norms. So then the person red I'm drawing, you're basically turning it into someone that's in green, which is basically what they want from you. A ringtone. Right through this video session, this is not good, but I'm gonna cut it out. But anyways, so don't mind the talking, but conformity is actually everywhere. Basically, from from schools to the rules of the road, and this is a good one, following trends. Basically, all having the same phone, all having the same cups, etc., etc. So, conformity is not bad. There are some goods, though. Basically, they can prevent chaos, especially from the dangerous stuff I'm gonna actually reward it. They can help us be safe. Basically, for example, when you're driving, that's one of the more prominent ways where you have to conform, or else you're gonna crash into something. That's why we have all these signs all of these rules set up so that we can keep us safe. Another thing is basically regulation. Regulation of, especially like the companies, regulation of stuff. Let me see. Regulations of people. Regulations of government, like, regulation and keep stuff in control, so we don't promote, like, for example, the government, we do regulation. So regulation in government, in like companies, sometimes that can be actually good to make sure we don't become exploitive. But I'm not gonna get into politics. I want to keep this as neutral, unbiased as possible in regards to politics. But I'm gonna actually be emphasizing on the cons, though. Basically, sometimes they can actually suppress individual dots. Even correct. So basically, sometimes you're in a group and you have the thought that like you're right on something, but the group does not believe, and then if you want to like, and then you have to interact with the group. So that can actually make you conform to their thoughts, even if someone else's thoughts is actually correct. And then we're gonna get to a experiment that emphasizes that pitfalls of conformity. It's called the Ask Conformity line experiment. So the introduction to this experiment is that there are like two sections, one with 3 lines like A, B, and C, and then it's different heights. Basically, you have like the line on the left that you have to guess correctly, and then so basically we call it, I think we call it like a subject or target line, but basically if you look at the example, assuming if they're matched, this line would be most similar to like line B. That's basically what the lines are, but there is a social group around that has to guess the experiment, and then one of the people in there where they get yellow is basically only one that's actually participating. The others are like guided by instructors what answers to give. So and then so for example, if we like do a different one, do A, B, C, and we are expected to like learn about the height of this. And then basically when generally, for example, if the answer for this was A, and then basically all of these people guess the correct answer, the subject actually produces the correct answer. But things get quirky though. In this experiment, some of the people give out wrong answers on purpose. These people that are indicated in black so we'll do this. So for example, if the correct answer for this was A again, and then they all like guess C, this person that's indicated in yellow, even though they might think A is correct, they might also guess C because they don't want to be judged for giving a different answer. That's our natural instinct. So when there's a group and they give an incorrect answer, instead of like actually telling you, sometimes what happens is instead of telling the actual answer, they can actually follow the group on what they think it is, instead of thinking about it by themselves of what the actual correct answer is. But I can get into more detail about the experiment, but I'm gonna move on. There are actually good like studies about this experiment. So next, one of the things where conformity is actually prominent a lot is school. So basically, peer pressure is very peer pressure is actually very prominent to your friend groups. And like more respectfully, basically, you might be conformed to a tribe because everyone else that they're asking you to try this, and you might be enticing to do it because you don't want to be like, you don't want them to make fun of them. You want to maintain that relationship with your friends. So another thing, grades. So basically, yourself, sometimes your people's minds of their success is actually determined by grades. So if you get like a bad grade, let's say you got a score like this, you might be discouraged, and you might think to yourself to like give up or something like this. And then it's actually pretty common with peers to share what you got on the test. So let's say a test. So if you get a lower score than your peers, let's just say you this person got a B and then this person got an A, you might be a little bit discouraged, and then the person, because so yeah, school can be about competition. Another thing, like challenging courses. So sometimes, so let's just say you are a student right here, and imagine you're this student, you just want to take college prep class, you just want to take regular classes, or you might want to take honors classes, but you want to be balanced about how many honors, AP, IB classes you take. But peer pressure can push you to take more of these honors, AP courses when you want a more balanced workload, or you don't want, or you're not comfortable taking all of these classes. Well, don't get me wrong. College applications can... Don't get me wrong. College applications might reward you for doing honors, AP, IB, all of these classes, because you're basically challenging yourself. One of the things colleges like to do is like, they want to see you're challenging yourself, of course. But colleges also, they're about balance, you know. And then like, no. They also like encourage students to like balance, like, you know, challenging yourself, balancing their like workload, so that, like, you know, they they don't, you know, but because, you know, college applications are like, they're like super competitive, they might they might make someone like stress out on their workloads. They're doing all of these challenging courses plus extracurriculars. And all of that because because they want to get accepted into their dream university. But I think, having a balanced workload, balanced like classes, there's balance, doing those balanced like, passions, like show off your, have a balanced workload, and you can pursue in all your things you're interested in. I think it's really important. It makes you like a more interesting person, and and wait, why am I pausing a lot? So yes. And then conformity can like push you into like, stressing out your workloads instead of having balanced workloads, and you're having like like pursuing in your interests, doing what you're interested in, because you don't want to be some people like, I think it's because it's better to be like an interesting person than like a person that's like stressed out of all these stuff. So I don't have anything more to say, so let's move on. Another thing conformity can do is they can make you follow trends. So no. So you are person A right here, and then person B. So I'm not gonna use it. So basically, there's many like trends that like you are needing to. You could be pressured into following some of these trends like that are on there. So one of the things that I push it in the wrong setting. So another thing conformity can do is like they can culturally like pressure you into getting like a certain stuff. One of the things is, one of the more prominent examples is phones. I'm just going to draw it like this. So, if you're in like a group where everyone owns an iPhone and you own an Android phone, and then you try to interact it, you might be peer pressured to get this shiny iPhone just because everyone else has it, and then they have all these cool features where you don't really have it, and then if you don't follow it, then you're and then if you try to talk to them, like and then some people might like encourage you to get it too by peer pressure too, of course. And then there's also a thing Basically, this is called the green. This is called the blue versus green stigma. At least in the U.S., like other countries don't really deal with the stigma much because they use like third-party messaging apps instead of the default instead of the messaging apps built into the phone. But what it is historically the iPhone. If you're on an iPhone and you're texting an iPhone user, you get a lot of benefits, and then it's called an iMessaging. But if you try to text an Android person, you get a green bubble instead when texting them, and then they don't have as much features, or they have worse texting experience to an iPhone user than he. So that person, that's an Android user, the person in the iPhone, they might get annoyed and then might pressure the person in the green bubble to like switch to an iPhone. But this stigma, I think it's slowly like, I think this stigma is slowly like starting to slow down because now there's something called RCS messaging, which is basically a feature developed by Google to make sure that so that when texting you get like more features than your standard SMS, MMS messaging. This allows them to get like almost all the benefits as a blue bubble. And another thing is like you might be enticed to buy certain products to let's see. Okay, so basically, I'm just gonna keep it like this. So basically, with the rise of like social media like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and even YouTube, this is a prominent example of conformity. We might be enticing to like get what the influencers want because you want to be like feel included instead of like because, and then with the peer pressure that everyone's like following it, you might be peer pressured to get a certain product like a Stanley Cup, for example. There's actually a Stanley Cup trend. Like, you might be enticed to like get the Stanley Cup when everyone around has it because that's what's happening on social media right now. And then, even if if you think, and then this could actually suppress your own thoughts of like, you don't think of buying buying what is cheapest. And then, of course, there's this modern culture of over-consumerism and stuff, but I'm not gonna get into that one. I'm just more into the conformity aspects of it, so that's it, essentially. I know I have to pause a lot here, but I know I have to pause a lot for this one. I know I have to pause a lot for this video, and I think this video is getting quite long right now. But this is my first time doing this animation, and I'm not doing this scripted for this one, and I thought I could do it without script, but I think some parts, like when I'm trying to explain it, like it didn't pop up into my mind to say it this time. But thanks for watching. If you want me to like continue, if you like this style